Welcome to the David Spisak Show. I'm so thankful that you're here, and as always, I will do everything I can to deliver you big value and a great ROI for the time that you're investing with me. So, I want to talk to you about something a little bit different. Nearly every business person that I speak to, and certainly every single dealer that I speak to and everyone I work with, tends to cite this as the number one challenge. It's finding talent. It's hiring people and hiring the right people to become members of their team. And you know the type of people you want. You want people that are going to bring something to the team, people that will strengthen the team, that people that will improve the culture of your team wherever you work, whether it's a dealership or somewhere else or whatever business you own. And, it got me thinking, the company NVIDIA has been in the news an awful lot, and for a very good reason. This is a company that has seemingly just blasted into the stratosphere, seemingly out of nowhere. This is a company that, believe it or not, may very well threaten Apple and Microsoft's place as the most valuable companies on earth at $3 trillion or beyond. This is a company whose founder, Jensen Huang, has seemingly gone from zero to over $80 billion in net worth, making him, as of right now today, the 17th richest person in the entire world. And it got me thinking because I had happened to hear a few stories about Jensen in the not so recent past. And it seemed like a great way to connect the dots about what could we learn about Jensen Huang and his journey, and potentially connect it to everybody's desire to find great people who become great teammates, who in turn strengthen the entire team. So let me share with you a little bit of background on Jensen Huang, because I think no matter whether you're into computers or not, whether you're in tech or not, whether you're in the car business or not, whether you have investments in the equity markets or an investor, have stock in NVIDIA or not, it's just incredibly interesting, powerful, and I think it could be very impactful. So Jensen was born in 1963 in Taiwan. His family ended up immigrating to the United States. They ended up in Kentucky, and Jensen, when he was, I think, around 10 years old, if I recall correctly, he was sent to a school for difficult children in Oneida, Kentucky. And when I had heard that he was sent to a school for difficult children, I really had a hard time wrapping my brain around this. I don't know if you've ever heard of any child in your entire lifetime who was sent away to a school for difficult children. I've never even heard that term. So Jensen had a really tough time because he was relentlessly bullied. He was just constantly the recipient and the victim of racial slurs. He was beat up. He was his first job he ever had at the age of 10 years old or so was cleaning toilets in the dorm room of the school. And Jensen actually said in an interview with the BBC back in 2010, I remember being scared and being sad. On the other hand, he said, you're just a kid and then you land in America and everything is big and beautiful and bright with amazing restaurants like McDonald's and Pizza Hut. You may hear that now and say, that's ridiculous, it's preposterous. Like amazing restaurants like McDonald's and Pizza Hut. Well, I would challenge you to ask any kid who's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, regardless of whether they were born in this country or some other country around the world, if to them, McDonald's is an amazing restaurant. And I could almost guarantee you, without a shadow of a doubt, that more than 90% will overwhelmingly say, yes, that is one amazing restaurant. So the other thing that I think is interesting to pull out of that particular statement, and you've probably heard this undoubtedly before, but, isn't it interesting and at times confounding that kids that are born in our country, greatest country in all of the world. And that's not just our words. That's not just us being homers thinking that. But if you go around the world, if you travel and you tell people where are you from and you say America, oh man, watch their eyes light up. And people have never dream about going to America just once. They oftentimes think that America is comprised of LA and New York City, but regardless, they just think it's amazing. It's a land of hope. It's a land of the free. It's a land that you could dream up anything and do anything. And yet we've got kids born in our own country that seemingly wake up every day and just can't seem to see any opportunities at all. So let's get back to Jensen. Jensen mentioned in a number of articles, a number of interviews over the last 20 years that he had worked in many minimum wage jobs. He even credited, he calls Denny's his alma mater because his first paying job was as a busboy at the age of 15 in Portland, Oregon. You see his family relocated from Kentucky, of all places, to Portland, Oregon. And that's exactly where I'm sitting right now. My office is in an area of Portland. And so really struck me that he ended up here. I'm not from here, but you wouldn't think that a guy who's one of the 20 wealthiest people in the world was born here. So he ends up at Denny's, getting paid a minimum wage to be able to bus tables and wash dishes. And he said at one point, man, I wash dishes better than anybody else. And I thought that was a really good thing to think about as well. And I'll circle back to that later on. As he grew up and he got out of high school, he ended up going to Oregon State and he got a degree in electrical engineering. He then got a master's degree from Stanford University in 1992. So that tells us that he undoubtedly worked very hard, had the same work ethic that he had at Denny's and other minimum wage jobs. He also applied to school because not just anybody obviously gets into Stanford and graduates from Stanford with a master's degree. From there, he ended up working at a number of jobs and got hired eventually at LSI Logic. And while he was at LSI Logic, well-known company, he actually presented the idea, think about this, he presented the idea for NVIDIA to the CEO who said, quote, that is one of the worst elevator pitches he has ever heard. One of the worst elevator pitches he had ever heard, Huang said. He ultimately left LSI Logic, and that's another thing to think about later on as we wrap up. He was then hired as a microprocessor designer at AMD. And he ultimately, in 1993, April of 93, when he was 30 years old, he started NVIDIA. By the way, he co-founded NVIDIA with a couple of other people, and he's been the CEO for 3 decades, which is nearly unheard of, certainly in terms of Silicon Valley or for companies on the stock market. He actually explained that at one point he was addressing the graduating class from Stanford, his alma mater, and he explained that graduating from one of the finest institutions on the planet would naturally elevate the expectations of the students that went to Stanford. It would elevate their expectations for the future, but it actually may hinder their success. Jensen said, quote, people with very high expectations have very low resilience. I'm going to say that again. People with high expectations have very low resilience, and unfortunately, resilience matters in success. I don't know how to teach it to you, except for I hope that suffering happens to you. He actually said that he wishes great pain and suffering onto that graduating class, certainly not meaning any harm or malintent. There was no malintent in that statement. He just simply meant, in his opinion, that without suffering, without going through hardship and adversities, he didn't think that people would be prepared for what was to come. Because ultimately, we all know at some point in our lives, personally and professionally, adversity, obstacles, challenges, defeat, getting rejected is going to find their way to our front door. And he really felt so sure that without that, we would not be prepared to go forward in life and be able to ultimately get over those rejections and those obstacles and those challenges to get where we needed to go. What makes that a profound statement and an especially important statement is the person who said it. It took him nearly 30 years to become an overnight success story. Another thing that I thought was interesting about Mr. Huang is the BBC once said that Mr. Huang eschews the ordinary trappings of corporate success. So many times you see on social media, it seems that people are doing what they're doing in the hopes of one day being able to snap a picture in front of a Ferrari or a Lamborghini, or maybe a vacation home in Hawaii or Mexico, maybe a long, luxurious trip over to Bali or Bora Bora or some other exotic location. But he actually shied away from that. Jensen also credits his work ethic. Think about this. He credits the work ethic that got him through to the point of starting NVIDIA, which, by the way, interestingly, ironically, that idea came to him and his partners while they were meeting at a Denny's. Yeah, the very same place, not in Portland, in Silicon Valley, but the same company where he got his first job, washing dishes. Because it was there that they actually came up with that idea for the first time. In 2022, well, I should first say, for those who haven't been following Jensen and NVIDIA's success, I believe the stock is up somewhere around 270% just in the last year. So it's nearly tripled its value in just 1 year's time. And most analysts would tell you it's not even remotely close to where it's going to ultimately go. But today, Jensen's worth, as I mentioned, around $80 billion. In 2022, he actually donated $50 million to his alma mater, Oregon State University, as a portion of a $200 million donation towards the creation of a supercomputing institute on campus. He also gave Stanford $30 million to build the Jensen Huang School of Engineering Center. And he even gave his alma mater, Oneida Baptist Institute, that same school for difficult children, the same school where he got bullied relentlessly, the same school where his job was to clean toilets. He gave them $2 million to build Wang Hall, which is a new girls' dormitory and classroom building. So I'm confident that you'll agree right about now that this is no ordinary life, and this is no common individual. Now, anybody who's known me for any period of time knows that one of my favorite words in the world is uncommon. I truly believe that we are not only uncommon based on our DNA being unique, but that we as individuals are truly uncommon. And if we somehow can tap into what actually makes us uncommon, if we really can learn what makes us uncommon, and I'll give you a spoiler alert, if you really think back to your childhood, to what made your engine go, what got you excited, what were your attributes then? What were you known for back then? I mean, were you a ferocious kid? Were you somebody that would stand? I know that, I can't remember the name of the statue that was on Wall Street. I think it was called Defiant Girl, perhaps. But there's that famous, massive bronze statue on or near Wall Street of the bull. And somebody created a statue of a little girl that's standing defiantly, looking at that bowl, staring that bowl down. And that statue is supposed to have many really important meanings. But for the sake of this particular discussion, I just think that it's so interesting to think that we are uncommon. Whoever was the inspiration for that little girl staring down that bowl certainly was uncommon in her bravery or her strength. And maybe that's one of the things that makes you uncommon. Maybe it's the fact that you're relentless. You don't give up no matter what happens. You just keep getting back up and shaking yourself off and moving forward. But something in every one of us makes us uncommon. And this particular gentleman, there's some really interesting takeaways I would like to leave you with. If you're somebody who's ever interviewed anybody for a position, who's been in a manager position, supervisory position, leadership position, how many Jensen Huangs come along in our lifetime as leaders, managers, or supervisors? It's a very small number. And do we have an interview process, a hiring process, onboarding and development process to ensure that we don't miss out on potentially special talent? I'm really proud to say that every single one of the people that I'm fortunate enough to work with at Disruptive Growth Solutions is an incredibly special talent. If you sit down with any one of them, they're like no other. They're great at what they do. They're kind, they're respectful, they're hardworking. They don't look at the clock. I don't necessarily care if they're in the office or not. I care about the results. And they deliver results every single time, every day, every week, every month. Do you have a process to make sure that you don't miss out on special talent? Marcus Buckingham, who is a 3 times New York Times bestselling author, his first book is called First Discover Your Strengths, and was the culmination of a 20-year project at Gallup. Gallup is considered perhaps the leading polling company, research company in the country and perhaps in the world. They spent 20 years trying to understand the relationship between associates and managers. Why do people do what they do? Why do they join certain companies, and why do they leave? And one of the things that he learned, one of the big takeaways from that 20-year project, was that people go to work for companies, but they always quit their manager. What's that tell you? When you go to work for a company, you go to work with great hope, anticipation, excitement, enthusiasm, and great expectations. When you quit your manager, it's because something has woefully fallen short. It's also because whatever expectations or hope you had, you've gotten to the point where they've diminished, all the way to the point to where you just don't think that it's going to happen. And so you go somewhere else and you rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. One of the really powerful things that came out of his first book was 12 questions that every employer should ask themselves. They should consider if, as any one of their employees, if they were to ask them 12 questions, how would they be answered? I remember one of those questions is, am I given the opportunity to do what I'm best at? Seems simple and obvious, but honestly, when you ask most employees, it's not necessarily the answer they'll give you. Another one was, has anybody acknowledged something great that I've done, a contribution I've made, just once in the last 7 days? And another, has anyone spoken to me about my career development in the last 6 months? And you think about it, and it gives you some insight as to what's important to people. Think back to Jensen. When he was doing those minimum wage jobs, when he was hired at LSI and just summarily rejected for his idea about NVIDIA, and when he worked at AMD or any other job. If we were to ask him right now, I'd be curious. Do you think that he would say that he was given the opportunity at each and every place to do what he's best doing? I would say not. Do you think anybody acknowledged him in the last 7 days that he worked at any given time about something he did that was a great contribution, or about any contribution? And do you think everybody that he worked for took the time to sit down at least once, twice a year to talk about his development, his goals, his objectives, what he wanted to do in the future? So you got to ask, do we actually do a great job of encouraging our associates, to have an opportunity to develop, to move into other positions? I know that at Bozard Ford, I'll never forget Ed Roberts, fantastic organization. I think maybe the pinnacle, one of the very best. Carter Myers is another. There's many others that put so much work, emphasis, focus, time, resources, and money towards building a great work culture and creating an environment where their people can flourish and grow. And I remember one of those examples was Ed Roberts telling me about somebody who worked in a service department who wanted to go to the variable department, wanted to go maybe, I think, from a technician to being a salesperson. No dealership wants to lose a technician, can't afford to. Hardest position to fill in a store. But instead of saying, no, you can't do that, they said, okay, sure. If that's what you think you would be best at. And that person became a top salesperson. But more importantly, they got happier. They got more fulfilled. They got more satisfied. And what do you think the likelihood that that person is going to stay at Bozard Ford for their entire career? It went up immeasurably. Do we also do a great job of encouraging our associates to serve up their potentially groundbreaking ideas? There was a person at Kodak that served up the idea, great idea, for digital cameras. And that person was also summarily rejected. And so why would we do that? We're trying to sell photo paper here. If you lost your mind. Kodak could have had a massive and should have had a massive head start on digital cameras, maybe even smartphones, if they would have listened. Jensen Huang gave that company the opportunity to at least consider going down that path where NVIDIA stands today as a $2 trillion company. What's LSI worth? I don't even know, but I'm sure it's not $2 trillion. Maybe most importantly, are we stuck in a mold of looking for and hiring based on experience? People that we feel comfortable with. Maybe they act like us. Maybe they talk like us. Maybe they have enough experience that we feel like we could plug and play and let them go do their thing and somehow something great's going to happen. Rather than looking for people that have a tremendously high emotional IQ. Why is that important? I don't know. They're great teammates. They're great for culture. They're great for client experience. If you want to exceed your client's experience, you need people with empathy. You need people that understand different social conventions and how to react and respond. You need people that understand how to diffuse situations. And that's all emotional IQ. Are we looking for that? Are we looking for work ethic? Are we looking for talent, drive, and potential? Or do we maybe shy away from that because it means it's going to require us being hands-on and engaged and spending a lot of time growing somebody? As I started with saying, if the number one challenge cited by most businesses and nearly every dealer in the retail auto industry is finding talent, maybe it's time that we move away from just simply hiring experienced bodies and moving towards talent and potential with a commitment to develop everyone we bring onto our team. Something to think about. I hope this has given you the value that I intended. I thank you again for taking the time to join me. I hope that you could share this out potentially with people that they themselves are struggling with this talent question, with this hiring, finding great people. And I hope that you take the time to subscribe and download so we can hang out again. But mostly, I wish the very best for you in whatever you're doing. Hope you have a great end to your month, a great start to your next month, and a fantastic 2024. I'm David Spisak, and I look forward to seeing you next time on the David Spisak Show. Thanks for joining.